I'd like to share an experience I had with the game of Team Fortress 2. It was about 9 p.m. on a Monday, I think 2 weeks ago, and I decided to play a multiplayer match of TF2. I signed on and started up for an automatic server selection to play game modes. I felt like playing Capture the Flag, so I select that option. My computer lagged a bit when it was searching for a server, which wasn't abnormal for me as my laptop is fairly distant from my router. But eventually it found one. I've only been playing TF2 since a little after it became free, so I don't have a big server history nor experience with the game, or servers in general, but something seemed rather odd about this particular server. Once I gained access to the server and the loading screen came up with the bar on the bottom right, as the server got about 70%, it shifted backwards and paused. It started going back and forth between 45 and 60%. The game froze after a few moments, and I decided to first quit the game. I went to get something to eat and came back to the game, started it up, and decided to play from my server history. I noticed a new server added to the list, CTF Playdead 905, or something along that line. After the events I'm about to explain, the server disappeared from my list, so I'm going on plain memory here. I tried the server, and similar to before, the load bar was all glitched and jittered a bit. However, it managed to complete this time around. Usually when you enter a server, a custom server, there will be some sort of splash page to welcome you to the server and advertise their site or briefly explain the rules. In this case, however, the entire splash page was black. There was nothing on it. I started to think something was wrong with my graphics card, with all the strange things that was happening, but decided to continue on. The game loaded. I selected Pyro as my class and I entered 2 Fort. For those of you who've never played Team Fortress 2, here's a brief explanation. It's a team-based online multiplayer FPS game, and this particular Capture the Flag mode, map 2 Fort, you have 2 fairly large mills, separated by a little lagoon and a bridge, and an underground network of pipes that you can enter. The objective is to obviously capture the opponent's flag and return it to your base. For this server, there were 2 teams of 6 upon joining. Both teams became full. The game was already mid-process and everything was working normally. Our team blue had already scored 1 point and we needed 2 more to win. The red team had 0 points. This particular game didn't have a time limit and we seemed to be going back and forth for about 40 minutes with a little to no progress. Occasionally, members from our team would type angry messages to the opposing team, accusing them of being cheap by having 4 engineers in their flag room with turrets and dispensers and teleporters, making it almost impossible to get their flag, and making the game seem endless. Up until now, things have been normal, until I started noticing for about 5 minutes. I've been going around the level and I have not seen a single one of my team members, nor any other players from the other team. People were still talking, however, so it kinda took a while for it to sink in that I haven't seen anyone at all for over 5 minutes. I thought that I had some sort of lag problem, so I asked other players if they were having the same issue, and the general response was no. But one player said they haven't seen me for a bit either. About 6 more minutes passed and I started to grow pretty bored. I decided to make one more round through the level before I would find another server. I left our fort and fell into the lagoon in the middle and proceed to enter the red team's pipe network. After the little room underground in the middle of the tunnel, there was a really long pipe that led to the staircase, going up into the base at the end. I noticed that an enemy scout was standing there, but he wasn't moving. just standing there with his bat out and staring at me. A strange form of relief swept over me that the game started to work again, and I charged at him and began shooting with my flare gun. The shots went through him, and I approached and disappeared completely. Really bad lag, I thought to myself. I ascended to the staircase. As I entered the base, a strange static noise sound started to replace the other game sounds. I made my way throughout their base. As I got closer to the flag room, the static got louder and louder until I couldn't hear anything else in the game at all. This was when things started to get really weird. I asked if anyone else heard the static, and I did not receive any reply whatsoever. No one had said a word since I saw the enemy scout in the pipe tunnel. I managed to get to the room adjacent to the flag room, with 2 halls going into it, and I could hear some sort of murmuring behind the static. As I went down to one of the halls and turned to the corner, I noticed that there was no flag room. It was plain black, light all into the game's void. I shot a couple of times and my bullets landed as if there was walls there, so I entered the room anyway. I saw the flag and picked it up. When I turned around to leave, there were no halls. Everything was black. The UI was still up on the screen. It said I had their flag, but there was nothing to the level. All the traces have disappeared. I tried to get an answer after explaining my problem. No response. I stood in the room, or lack thereof, for about 3 minutes, until I suddenly the game froze and the game ended. But the message didn't say anyone won or lost. The announcer's voice was completely distorted. The scoreboard was broken. The loading screen quickly came up and it said, "Downloading Playdead 0090." Or something along that line. It took about 17 minutes to download. It was a really big file. When it finished, the black server screen came up again. I went through the screens and selected Spy. The level loaded to something completely indescribable. I tried to save a screenshot, but every picture I tried to get said error, and print screen didn't work. The level looked rather black and white and very glitchy. The textures on the walls are kind of like 8-bit blocks, but really distorted. It was almost like playing a 3D version of a static snow screen on TV. I went through the level and asked everyone, "What is this map?" There was no response. I checked the player list, and other than my name, everything else was listed as "I am dead 1, I am dead 2, I am dead 3, etc. I've never encountered anything like this before, other than some prank games people made fun and hacks along the lines of the Majora's Mask one. But this was an online game with what I thought secure servers. I decided to give it a few more minutes and explore the level, which was a really large maze of very oddly shaped tunnels. Also, there were no sound effects whatsoever. Nothing I did caused a sound. Eventually came to a really long tunnel with what I imagined the middle of the level. The tunnel had darkness at the end of it. It seemed almost endless, as I walked for at least a minute in one direction with no change to the map. I decided to turn around and go back, thinking the map has glitched. And the moment I turned my camera around, I saw the enemy scout I saw earlier. Except something was really wrong with it. His eyes were completely empty. His left arm was rather deformed and decomposed in possible directions. His legs remind me of a crab. I almost jumped out of my seat at the sight and thought, what the fuck is going on? Early, the chat log, but there was no response. I stood there and stared down at the strange scout. After several moments, the other players started talking, but all that appeared was corrupted, garbage text. The scout quickly approached me in a sudden, tough, irregular fashion, and I heard a very, very loud burst of static, and all of a sudden, it kicked me out of the server. I went to check the server and it was gone from my history. Naturally, I immediately shut off the game and haven't played it since then. I think it was some sort of prank, but it was pretty creepy, and game hacks don't usually creep me out. Update, July 13, 2011. After posting this, I decided to play the game again. I went into my server history to find the King of the Hill map, but I noticed that TF Playdead 905 was back. But I noticed this time it had 0 players, so I went into the server and, unlike before, it loaded normally without any issues, just like Q4 when it entered before. There were no other players on the server, nothing seemed really out of place, and I walked around the map for a while, finding nothing. The only thing I noticed that was strange was that I would hear the sound effects glitch every now and then. When selecting a character, there was a static noise that kept repeating, and when I went to the tunnel area, I thought I heard footsteps. I shut down the game a few moments later, and I'll try again another time. Maybe I'll be able to get some footage, but until then, I don't know if I feel comfortable playing Team Fortress 2 again.